Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that. And thank you to everyone that's attending this morning. We really appreciate having you on the call today. So this session is, of course, looking forward to quantum and, of course, the imminent Q-day that may be coming along, possibly sooner than we think. If you'll just bear with. There we are. So my name is Peter Jones. I'm a cybersecurity specialist working here at Conscia UK. And my role is effectively to work with our customers to not only protect them today, but also to start planning for the protections that they're going to require tomorrow and as innovations really come upon us with the latest technology. So thinking forward is very much part of what we'll do. Part of Conscia UK. Prior to that, I was with Cisco as part of their UK public sector team, and prior to that with Microsoft, primarily responsible for the policing. So, Conscia UK and the Conscia Group, we're now over 20 years old. We are present in 11 countries around Europe, primarily in Northern Europe. And we've got something like over 2,000 employees right now, most of whom are either engineers or on the technical side of the business. So it gives you an idea of how we really come to market. We provide managed services primarily within the collaboration, the networking, the security, and the smart workplace, really operating as an extension of your local team. So that's enough about Conscia. Let's talk about quantum. But before we do, I just want to assure everybody on the call that this is not going to go deep dive into quantum mechanics and various formulas. I don't have a PhD in quantum mechanics or quantum computing. We're going to be talking at a fairly high level, and we're going to be taking it from the perspective of a cybersecurity professional. So first of all, to get everybody onto the same page, I really just want to place an image in everyone's mind about traditional compute and quantum compute and how the two differ. So if we look at traditional compute, this is something that I'm sure everyone on the call is going to be very familiar with. We're talking bits, we're talking ones and zeros. This is effectively electrons going into a transistor, and that transistor either turning on or off to present a 1 or a 0. So we take sequentially data in, we process that data, and then we push that data out. It's very, very straightforward. It's worked for us for the last 40 years, and I guarantee it's going to work for us for the next 40 years. Traditional computing is not going away anytime soon. However, when we move towards quantum computing, we move away from bits and we move towards qubits, quantum bits. And with quantum bits, we're now working with the laws of nature. We're working at a particle level. So we introduce new concepts. We're not just talking about zeros and ones anymore. We're talking about every single position between 0 and 1. That is effectively a superposition. So it broadens out our capability to compute. We also introduce concepts such as entanglement, the ability to be able to connect 2 qubits together. So we can inspect 1 qubit, and simply by inspecting that qubit, we can understand the state of the second qubit, no matter where that qubit is in the universe. This is the famous phrase that came about spooky action at a distance, which was, I think, a great explanation for quantum computing. But essentially, the image that I'd like to place in your mind is the fact that we can take a large amount of data, we can process it very quickly, and then we can produce an outcome. The way I think about this is the way our mind works. So we bring in an awful lot of data from our sight, our hearing, our smell, our touch, and our taste. We process that information using billions of neurons in our mind, and we immediately create an outcome. Now, we're doing that constantly, And that is exactly what quantum computing does. It takes a vast amount of data, it processes it very, very quickly, and then produces an outcome for us. Another way to look at it is if we look at a maze from above, a traditional computer will consider every option to exit that maze and then eventually come up with a solution. A quantum computer will see that all of the solutions at the same time, and therefore be able to recognize the successful solution straight away. So again, we're not replacing traditional computers here. We're simply complementing traditional compute with quantum computing, doing the things that traditional compute typically finds it hard to do. So these two are going to work very well together over the next few years. Now, we're going to see that with a number of developments. Already in healthcare, we're seeing this right now with innovations in drug development. If you take a look at molecular science, with quantum computing, we'll be able to take a look at that molecular level. And if we see a molecule that is potentially toxic to that particular drug, we can remove it very early on in the innovation stage. So again, shrinking those times to new drug developments dramatically. Medical imaging, again, working at a particle level, be far more granular than we've ever seen before. And when we take a look at personalized treatments, we can look at an individual with their entire genome makeup and then compare that with their lifestyle and their current medications to create those personalized treatments that will be far more effective than they've ever been in the past. So we can really expect some great things to be coming ahead. Same is true with climate change. Right now, climate change with traditional computers using ones and zeros find it very challenging to predict what climate will do. Therefore, we're only able to see 2 or 3 weeks in advance. With quantum computing, we're using the laws of nature, and therefore we're able to embrace that chaos theory that is nature to be able to predict climate change across much longer paths or distances. Material science, we're already seeing this today with batteries and superabsorption. You know, we're seeing batteries that can charge very, very quickly in a matter of minutes, and that's all based on quantum science. Cleaner fuels, solar panels, again, understanding the materials that will work more effectively in those developments is going to be all really quantum based. And therefore, we're going to see some dramatic innovations going forward. Now, I'm sure you've all recognized on the call that the advances in AI is changing everything. And this is now very significant in the world of quantum, because right now, most organizations are using AI systems to simulate quantum computers or quantum capabilities. Now, if you can simulate quantum capabilities, then of course you can do all sorts of testing without ever having to touch any quantum hardware. And it's a result of this that means we have seen some dramatic step forwards over the last 2 or 3 years in areas that have really been holding back quantum innovation for quite some time. Those key challenges like error correction and cohesion, the ability to be able to maintain a quantum state for a reasonable period of time. That's always been a massive challenge for anyone that's working in the quantum space. But now we're seeing Google come out with the Willow chipset. And of course, they have concluded that with the more qubits that you have within a chipset, then the better the error correction becomes. And they were actually able to prove that they could reduce error correction to below 0.1%. And that meant they could prove that a quantum machine would be commercially viable at scale. So again, a critical step forward with Google and the Willow chipset. Just this week, Microsoft have released the Majorana 2 chipset. And with that, they have proven that they are 1,000 times better in their ability to be able to maintain a quantum state than they were previously. So they're now talking about maintaining that quantum state for over 20 seconds, which is dramatically better than we've ever been able to achieve before. And that is all, of course, due to the advances in AI. So we're going to be seeing an absolute supercharge of innovation in quantum and the compression of innovation timescales massively over the next few years. So today, if we take a look at traditional supercompute and we couple it with AI, then we already know the impact that that's going to have on our lives. We're experiencing it right now. We're seeing that level of innovation. If we then introduce quantum and native quantum into that mix, not simulated quantum that we're using today, but native quantum, then really that the innovation again accelerates tenfold. And we get to a point where things that we considered impossible today could potentially become possible. It really does change everything about the way that we are developing solutions going forward. So as I say, we can look at developments in healthcare, in climate change, in logistics, and there's all other areas that quantum are going to be able to help. But there's also a downside to this. And that is that one of the first user cases we're going to see in a quantum relevant computer is that ability to be able to factor prime numbers. And again, I'm sure a lot of you on the call will know where I'm going with this one. But if we can factor very large prime numbers, and I take you back to that initial slide where we pictured very large amounts of data processing very, very quickly to create an outcome, we can take a 617 character prime number and factor that down to its component parts to identify the prime numbers that made up that particular 617-bit element, then we potentially have the ability to break RSA 2048. And that, of course, has huge implications across our whole digital economy. And it's this ability to be able to break RSA and modern day encryption that we refer to as Q-day. So let's just think. Q-day is that point at which quantum computers become powerful enough to break classical public key encryption, also known as crypto relevance. So when this happens, we have a major challenge on our hands, because all of a sudden, as soon as we realize that Q-day is here, it's interesting, not much happens. Nothing actually breaks. Everything still continues to work. We're still able to do our financial transactions and our retail transactions and all of that. What does break, though, is trust. Trust in our digital economy. And that is something that we really do need to control. So Q-day becomes a significant event. The interesting point is, the chances are we're not going to know. It's not going to be like the Millennium Bug, where we knew at midnight on that day we were going to be able to, we're going to have a problem and we could deal with it. With Q-day, it's very much like Alan Turing with the Enigma machine. Once they discovered that they could break the code, it became the biggest secret anyone could hold, and they would lose lives in order to protect that secret. So if a nation state discovers a quantum machine that becomes crypto relevant, then we potentially have a problem, because they'll be holding on to that secret for as long as they possibly can and taking advantage of it against their adversaries for as long as they possibly can before it becomes public. So Q-day is really interesting. We need to prepare for it. We don't know when it's going to happen, but something I think we can all agree on now is it will happen at some point in the future. So we do need to get started. But before we go down that path, I just wanted to take a little step back and look at the encryption standards that have been used in the past and that are being used today, because this is not a new challenge. We generally use two types of encryption, either symmetric encryption or asymmetric encryption. Symmetric encryption for bulk data, asymmetric for key exchange and digital signatures. If we take a look at symmetric encryption, We've had DES, we've had RC4, we've had triple DES, and they've all lasted possibly sort of 15 or 20 years before computing caught up and effectively was able to break those encryption standards. As a result, we moved on to AES 128, and for more sensitive data, we're now using AES 256, advanced encryption standards. So that's all well and good. However, there is an algorithm called Grover's algorithm that says if you have a suitable quantum computer, then you could potentially halve the protection that you achieve with symmetric algorithms today. So that's okay, that's sort of manageable. You know, with symmetric algorithms, we're only using a single password. So it's really it's a situation of brute force. So now, if we can move everybody up to an AES 256 as the standard that's being used in the quantum era, then we're still achieving the same protection as we get with AES 128. So most encryption specialists are saying that, you know, generally we're okay. We're in a sort of all right position with symmetric encryption. With asymmetric encryption, it's a different story altogether. We're talking about the key exchange and the digital signatures. This is all of the integrity that exists within our digital economy, and that's based on two standards, RSA and elliptic curve. Now, those two standards are based on very hard calculations that are based on prime numbers, calculations that traditional computing find it really difficult to solve. However, quantum computing, of course, solves that problem. So we have a challenge here. We're going to have to move on from RSA and elliptic curve. And for that, we need to introduce post-quantum cryptography or quantum safe algorithms. Now, we'll talk about quantum safe algorithms and what that actually means, but you might be asking the question now, do I really need to worry about this? You know, PQC and crypto relevant quantum computers, that is all something for the future. You know, I'm dealing with AI right now. I'll deal with quantum a bit later down the line. Well, actually, you do need to start thinking about it right now, because we have a situation called harvest now, decrypt later. That is, if you are storing valuable data today, then there is a chance an adversary will be stealing that data in its encrypted form and simply waiting for a crypto-relevant quantum computer to be able to break the encryption. Now, if you have short-term data, things like, you know, credit cards that are going to run out over the next couple of years, we don't need to worry about that too much. It's more to do with the data that has long-term value. So this is value that needs to be kept secret over the next 5, 10, 15 or longer years. That's going to be PII information. It's going to be MOD information, Ministry of Defence. It's going to be critical national infrastructure information. Certainly within the finance, we're going to see this is going to become a critical issue. And also with university research. If you're holding university research that needs to be protected over the longer term, you need to be paying attention about harvest now and decrypt later, and ensuring that you're putting everything in place to be able to protect the data that is currently encrypted within your environment today. But we've talked about the time frame and, you know, when is this going to happen? So I wanted to share one of the quantum roadmaps that exist today. That's IBM's. Right now, they're saying in 2026, they will be able to achieve a quantum relevant, a scientifically, they will be able to achieve, I do apologize, scientific quantum advantage by the end of 2026. So what does that mean? Effectively, it means they will be able to prove in the lab that they can produce a calculation that will effectively outperform a traditional computer over time. Now, that's absolutely fine. Other private organizations are, disputing these timeframes and actually accelerating some of these timeframes. But we'll go with IBM for this for now. They're saying within 2026, they can scientifically prove quantum advantage within the lab. That's fine, but what we actually need to do is prove practical quantum advantage. Because practical quantum advantage is that ability to use quantum machines that are able to outperform traditional computers to solve today's real problems. Now, if you take a look at the roadmaps from Google or from Microsoft or from most of the other major players, they're all saying roughly around 2029, they are going to be able to produce a completely fault-tolerant quantum system that has the ability to prove practical quantum advantage. So again, that is a dramatic move forward from where we were just a few years ago. Because if we were to take a look at that, a few years ago in 2019, Google was estimating that RSA 2048 would require 20 million qubits to be broken. That was in 2019. They changed that calculation in 2025 to say, actually, it would only take 1 million qubits to break RSA 2048. They said earlier this year in 2026 that it would take about 500,000 qubits to break elliptic curve. So again, these numbers are coming down dramatically. Today, and I'm talking about announcements that have been made in the last month, we're talking about claims that to break RSA 2048 could potentially be done with less than 10,000 qubits. So if you take a look at those announcements in the last month, we're seeing Microsoft with their Marijuana 2 chipset dramatically increasing the capability to achieve cohesion within that superposition. So again, achieving cohesion of over 20 seconds, which is dramatically more than we've ever seen in the past, over 1,000 times more. But you couple it also with Quantware. Now, Quantware are a private organization, and they came out with an announcement earlier this month to say they would be able to produce what is effectively a device the size of a shoebox that would contain over 10,000 qubits. Now, that in itself, raises all sorts of questions about how many physical qubits, how many logical qubits would you get in there, or you could achieve. But from a pure data center scaling point of view, if you take Quantware's announcement, the ability to be able to compress 10,000 physical qubits into a shoebox means that we'll be able to scale these systems much better going forward. And then you couple that with the Advanced Quantum Technology Institute, who said, we've now introduced an algorithm that actually impacts Shor's algorithm. And Shor was the one that said that we could break the RSA 2048 with enough compute power. AQTI have introduced JVG algorithms, which effectively split Shor's algorithm. So you can use the majority of the calculations on a supercomputer, and then you only use a part of that calculation on a quantum computer. If you're able to do that, then you'll be able to break RSA with less than 10,000 qubits required. Now, these three innovations held independently don't really mean much. They'll sort of, they're all part of the big story. But as you see them being announced today, you can recognize that by 2029, there's a good chance we'll be able to pull these together and create a quantum computer that has the power to be very relevant going forward. So, looking forward then, the good news about all of this is somebody is already thinking about it. Now, NIST, it's an organization in the States, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, thought about this from 2016. And they've been working on it now. They standardized on a number of post-quantum cryptography standards or quantum safe standards. These move away from using prime numbers And they're now using multi-dimensional lattice-based approaches to cryptography, which again is an area that quantum finds very challenging to deal with. So they standardized on crystals kyber, crystals dilithium, and Sphinx Plus. That then was ratified as ML-Chem for key exchange, ML-DSA for digital signatures, and SLH-DSA for embedded systems. And that's now moved into FIPS 203, 204, 205. So these algorithms now exist. We have quantum-safe algorithms in place, and they are fully ratified and available to be used. All we need to do now is, of course, implement them within our systems. And that is where the problems really do begin. Because if you were to ask any organization today what it would take in order to migrate from their current algorithms that they're using, RSA and elliptic curve, to PQC algorithms, it would typically take approximately 10 years. It's a very complex move. So throughout Europe, all of the regulators are now providing guidance and advice to enable that move or that migration from PQC, from traditional algorithm over to PQC. In the UK, we use the National Cybersecurity Centre. They advise all of our public sector organisations, and they've come out with this timeline, which is you need to start as soon as possible to discover what you have in place today, where your valuable data lies, how it's being stored, and how, more importantly, it's being encrypted today. And then between now and 2028, develop a plan to be able to achieve a level of crypto agility, to be able to move from that traditional algorithm over to a quantum safe or PQC algorithm. So understanding what data that you have in place and how it's being encrypted is really important, and then prioritizing that data so you can migrate the most important data as early as you possibly can. So from 2028 to 2031, that migration needs to start and take place, and then you need to refine the plan. So between 2031 and 2035, all your systems are fully PQC enabled and fully quantum secure. That is the plan. I think what they've probably missed in this plan is 2 stages before you need to do the discovery. The first one is to let your senior leadership know about quantum and PQC and the challenges that you're going to face as an organization over the coming years, and then prioritize why they need to invest in a solution now. Creating that awareness at a senior leadership level is really important. The next step is then to create a team who understand cryptography and understand public key infrastructure within your organization to start that migration process. And I think everybody on this call would agree that's not going to be an easy task in itself. There's very few people that fully understand encryption and therefore can help with this. And the longer this timeline goes on, the more in demand those people will be. So again, the sooner that you start, then the better it can be. In terms of quantum awareness, I thought this was quite interesting. I went back a year. ISACA ran a poll of 3,000 companies around Europe in May 2025 and asked about their awareness of quantum and the NIST standards generally in the industry. Now, you can read the numbers yourself, but essentially, in May of 2025, we were seeing a tiny awareness of the threat and of quantum computers and what we'll need to do in order to accommodate them as they appear over the next few years. I'm delighted to say that within 2026, this situation has changed. Sorry, bear with me. This situation has changed, and awareness is now very much greater than it's ever been before. People are starting to understand and talk about not only the developments that we're seeing within quantum and innovations within quantum, but also the need to move to PQC standards urgently over the next few years. And that's actually proven with this particular seminar. This seminar is probably the most popular seminar Conscia have ever run in their 23-year history. So again, awareness and interest in quantum and PQC standards is really now starting to build. So in summary, Q-day, yes, it will happen, and most likely it will happen much sooner than you think. Being prepared will pay dividends later. Understanding what you have in place today and what needs to change, and then having the people in place that understand this this challenge and can put in place a plan is really going to be a worthwhile investment right now, because we're not just talking about the practicality of Q-day and what that means. It's all about trust and reputation, and trust and reputation in your business will be challenged if you're not able to say that you're quantum safe. So please do start now. Create a team as soon as you can and work on that discovery and the prioritization of all of your data. Move towards an agile state of security. So you may not need to move from RSA or elliptic curve directly over to PQC. There may be an interim step where you're using both of those standards and you're migrating over a period of time. Again, that might be more practical, especially for the legacy systems that are in play today. And for those that make the investment early, I think I can absolutely assure you business will follow to those who can establish trust. So it might be a large investment. It is a big challenge to take right now, but it's an investment certainly worth making as soon as you possibly can. How can Conscia help? Well, all I can suggest is that you speak to us. There are so many threads to this challenge that we can help in a number of different ways. If you're concerned about the steal now, decrypt later challenge, then again, have a word with us. We can talk to you about really coming to best practice and implementing zero trust principles to ensure that nobody can get through to that data that's being stored. If you're working to various compliance regulations around Europe, whether it be NIS2, whether it be DORA, whether it be CIS or CAF or Cyber Essentials, again, speak to us and we very much welcome being able to help you in that environment and ensuring that you're working up to best practice to pass those assessments. And if you're not protecting your data 24/7 today, then this is now not optional. You do need to think about how you can put yourself in a position where you provide that protection and visibility, eyes-on visibility across your entire estate 24/7 and ensure a suitable response, i.e. a very quick response, should we see any indications of compromise. That, of course, is managed detection and response. So if you're in need of that type of service, again, we'll be delighted to have a chat with you. So that was it. I think we covered an awful lot about quantum, about PQC, about the timeframes that are shrinking now. 2029 is an absolutely key date. Google, Cloudflare, they're all planning to be PQC or quantum secure by 2029, and others are following in that space as well. So these timeframes really are now compressing, and we do need to pay attention and start taking action today. Thanks very much indeed for your time. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was worthwhile use of your lunchtime. And if you'd like any information, then please do get in touch with your local Conscia representative. As soon as we close down the session, you will be seeing a survey for the session. Please do fill in that survey. We really welcome your feedback so we can improve these sessions going forward. In the meantime, thanks once again. We will address the questions that you've raised today, and we will ensure that we get those out to you early next week. Appreciate your time and have a good day. Thank you.